Well, hello everyone, my name is Bhante Wade Buripanyo. I'm here in the library at Empty Cloud Monastery with Ayawata, and we'll be hosting tonight's monk chat. Um, you may all know this is a regular Friday evening live stream that we do at this time, where you can send in questions about any aspect of Buddhism you'd like, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. We go for about up to an hour and a half. As long as you keep sending questions, we'll keep answering them up until about an hour and a half or so. And we're joined by a great group of lay residents here in the library also. We have 4 lay residents currently, taking advantage of the opportunity to live at the monastery and practice by the monastery schedule. You get a taste of monasticism and also to deepen their practice. And so we've got some questions coming in already, it looks like. Maybe what we'll do is we'll start off with the traditional Namo Tassa, the homage to the Buddha, and then get into the questions. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. I have a knack for messing up chanting, so this is par for the course. Okay, for me. Sorry, everyone. All right, so we'll go ahead into the questions. We have a question from Richard in Bolivia. Welcome, Richard. Greetings. And here's a question about meditation, saying that I often have ill will towards meditation while I'm in meditation. I want that my clock rings quickly and the meditation finishes quickly. Okay. How to overcome this problem? I meditate for 40 minutes. And I think this is quite a common problem, Richard. You know, I think many of us have found ourselves in a situation where we're meditating and we really wish the bell would ring and it would be over. Sometimes the mind can be so restless, or we might be sitting in discomfort or something like that, you know. We might be in physical pain while sitting. We could be very restless, or we might even be very drowsy and struggling to stay awake. I found myself doing that sometimes at very early morning meditations, also late night meditations at times. And so I think this is a common problem. So actually, what I could say is, I'm thinking that it would be easier to answer the question if we knew what it was about meditation that made you feel ill will. You know, why it was that you wanted the bell to ring more quickly. Maybe between Ayawata and I, we can think of some general ideas about how to deal with this ill will while meditating. One idea I have is you could try the recollection of peace. For example, if you're not drowsy, for example, or lazy, but if you're experiencing a restlessness, the recollection of peace can be very helpful. And it's very simple, which is part of the beauty of it. So if you simply think, may I be calm, you know, may I be calm, and you might harmonize it with the breath. I think many of you have heard me teach this before. But it has some magic to it, it seems. It seems to work much better than you might expect. And so as you're breathing in, you might think, may I? And then as you're breathing out, think, be calm. May I be calm. So as you're breathing in, think, may I? And as you breathe out, think, be calm. And this can be remarkably calming. And it speaks to the power of us to have influence over the emotions we feel, you know. So if you're experiencing restlessness, this can be very helpful. I wonder if you have any ideas, Ayawata.
Oh, thank you, Ajahn. Well, maybe something I could supplement to
Yeah.
what Ajahn was saying that wouldn't necessarily be a different technique. You could actually combine it with what Ajahn was saying, but maybe a kind of different angle on it is I think, at least in my experience, and I think this is true of everybody, that often if we're waiting for the time, we're having an expectation, like time is passing too slowly. Um, I don't know how long you've been meditating, Richard, but I think that's something that many meditators will come to see to some extent or another, is that time, it's really kind of a matter of perception relative to how quick the mind is going. So if your mind is going very quickly, then the seconds pass very slowly. And if your mind is very slow, then the seconds might go very, very quickly. And so one thing that I found helpful, for example, is if you're caught in that restlessness, kind of slowing down and just being like, oh, I'm going forward, I'm pushing forward, and just trying to stop and recognize that while the mind is moving, everything is just fine as it is. It's just peaceful, and it's just my mind is racing, but actually, just sitting here in this room, my body's just sitting here, my breath is just going, thoughts are just arising. It's just normal. It's just peaceful. Nothing is wrong. I'm just having this hindrance. It's just a hindrance, but everything is perfectly fine. And you could actually pair this with what Ajahn was saying. So once you realize that, then you can start to say, just may I be calm, may I be peaceful, and just kind of recognizing that it only feels that way because we don't want to face reality, but actually reality can be very inviting, very welcoming, very peaceful. We just realize that we're making the problem. Actually, everything is perfectly fine. We just need to calm down. So you can just, like Ajahn is saying, just relax. It's okay. Everything is fine. And so if a mantra helps you kind of inhabit that mind state, that could be helpful. Yeah.
Something for dealing with ill will in particular. So aside from restlessness, would be in general we might practice loving kindness meditation. Um, I came to think, perhaps you're having ill will towards meditation because of restlessness, as I mentioned. Also, might be because of drowsiness. But another idea. You've got two ideas about peace. Another idea though would be loving kindness meditation. And loving kindness meditation is an antidote for aversion, for ill will, for anger, annoyance, frustration, these kinds of things. And so this would be, many people practice this also kind of with a verbal recitation. So I was talking about may I be calm for the recollection of peace. For loving kindness meditation, it might be may I be happy. You might also practice loving kindness meditation towards someone else. And this also will bring up that good feeling in the heart and displace aversion. So you might think about yourself, may I be happy? Or you might think about someone that you really admire or respect, or someone whom you really love, or at least like, perhaps a teacher or an older relative, such as a parent or someone like this, or a dear friend, perhaps a pet, and think, may they be happy, and try to just think of them, and stay with this theme for a little while. It takes some faith sometimes. If we're actually experiencing ill will, if we're really frustrated or angry, and we're trying to practice loving kindness meditation, it can be kind of hard to get into it. You might discard it quickly. If you're feeling really negative, but if you have some faith with it, and can try to stay with it in a calm way, staying on that theme, then actually, in fact, gradually it seems to build until eventually it displaces that anger. You just have to have some patience with it, stick with it. And perhaps after practicing with a few of these kinds of people who you admire or love, or who you really like a lot, you can also still come back to yourself and practice loving kindness that way. All right, those are a few ideas. You can also kind of key into peaceful things in the environment. This is something else I thought of that I almost forgot to mention. So you might like actively notice if you have a Buddha image, and look at the Buddha image. If you're feeling restlessness, and notice the Buddha seems peaceful. Or you might listen and see if you're in a quiet place, notice if it's quiet. I guess if you're in a very busy, noisy place, then it'll be harder to do. But to key into something peaceful. So If you, so you can see if there's something like that. If you're meditating outside and there's a tree, you know, or even a stone, something like this. This seems actually it's quite peaceful. You can draw the contrast, the busyness of the mind. But if you focus on that, it can make you feel more peaceful. A body of water, for example, like a pond or something like this. Anyway, so these kinds of ideas, if you can look around and find something peaceful and kind of pay attention to that, that can help you become more peaceful in turn. All right. Now, see, there aren't too many questions. How about that? All right. We only have looks like a bunch more popped up. All right, okay, so there are several questions. I wonder, we have one more question, which is great. We have one more question from Richard. We were talking about just taking one question at a time, Ayawada and I, before we started. We have another question from Richard right here, and I don't know, what do you think? We break the rule already and just go ahead and take
Up
this
to
one?
you, Ajahn.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and answer this question also
Suggestions?
for Richard, okay. We're very non-dogmatic here in Buddhism. So Richard says, I want to be celibate for the rest of my life. Wow, okay. Because in that way, one day I could ordain as a bhikkhu. Wow, sadhu, okay. How can I make this inclination of mind more and more strong? I keep the 8 precepts. Okay, so it sounds like you already are celibate since you keep the 8 precepts. Of course, the 3rd precept is the abstention from any kind of sexual activity. And so sadhu anumotana, rejoice in your goodness in keeping precepts. That's a very high level of discipline, and it's a very good karma. And it's said in the scriptures, it's hard to find someone in the world who practices celibacy and who doesn't, and so that's a very special thing. And similarly for the other precepts, it's very hard to find someone who doesn't eat past midday, and it's a very special thing. Well, how do you make the determination to be celibate for the rest of your life stronger and stronger, because you want to be a bhikkhu in the future? And it's interesting. It's a great question, and I think a wonderful idea. I actually have a tendency personally to lean towards the idea of taking things one day at a time, though. I don't know. You could reflect on the benefits, and you could redetermine the 8 precepts every day. This is a good way to make your adherence to the 8 precepts better and better. Recommit to them every day. This is commonly done by Buddhists, by lay Buddhists, perhaps as part of a morning puja or something like this each day. Undertaking the 3 refuges and reciting the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, for example, and then reciting your 8 precepts. And this will help it to really solidify in the heart, that this is the path you're on. And then, if you want, you can make the determination every day that you want to be celibate for the rest of your life. And that's another way, so is making that vow frequently, that it really sinks in deeper and deeper into the heart. And you can reflect, as I mentioned, on the benefits of being celibate, as well as the benefits of the other precepts that you're keeping. And sometimes you can also practice the recollection of your sila as a formal meditation object. We have this in the suttas. It's one of the, come to be known in the Theravada tradition as one of the 6 inspiring themes. And so if you reflect on each one of the precepts you keep and how relatively unique that is in the world, for example, the abstention from killing living beings, the very first precept. There are many people in the world who do kill living beings. And while we don't judge them, we think, well, actually, that for someone to not kill living beings, it's actually not to be taken for granted, and that's a special thing. And that can be very inspiring to the heart and feel good. And as you think through these precepts and think about what you do, then this also can help the heart to stay on that course, I think, to feel very good about keeping these precepts. Yeah, and you can practice this meditation technique, as it says in the sutras, all the way until you start experiencing rapture. And so it's really a wonderful meditation technique. And maybe this will help you with the issue you raised in your last question about ill will towards meditation. If you practice with the inspiring themes, such as recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, recollection of your sila, recollection of your generosity, recollection of devas, these are very uplifting themes to practice with. And so it can make your meditation a very joyous kind of occasion. I wonder, do you have any ideas, Ayawada, about this?
Well, maybe one I could add is I think maybe related to what you were saying, Ajahn, about taking it day by day,
Mm.
is I would give the suggestion that it's best that I think that related to also to taking determinations, you don't want to break let's say you decide that you're not going to keep the 8 precepts. I think what you don't want to do is have that be an impulsive decision in the moment. You want it to be an informed decision. So if you are going to break the like for example, if you're going to stop following the 8 precepts, ideally it wouldn't be like a moment of temptation that you fall into, but rather it would be like, okay, I'm going to take a week, I'm going to take 2 weeks, I'm going to take a month, and I'm going to really decide if this is really what I want to do. And so it becomes something very conscious, and that also will help you in the future. If you do want to retake the precepts or make other determinations, you don't have this feeling of, oh, I give in, or the mind already knows what it's like to trick you into falling into that. And so I think it's helpful, even if you do it but one day. Like for example, you take it that day, and you really mean it. So if you're not going to follow it the next day, if you're tempted that day, at least this day I won't break it. And I'll think about it and I'll make a decision the next day intentionally not to take the 8 precepts. So it won't be like you take them, but it's like, oh, well, I'll see how it goes. And then you break it. But actually, this will help you because, for example, another example with food, which is relevant of all the precepts, but someone recently was talking about temptation with food. If you take the precept kind of like, oh, I'll take this food and just take the precept and see how it goes for today, you might end up eating food. But if you take it like, well, just today I'll take it and I'll see how it goes. Maybe tomorrow I won't, but at least today I really will take it. I really will. So however long, it could even be 8 hours or however long you take a precept, I think it's helpful if when you take it, you really take it. And then if you break it, it's kind of it's not a breaking, but it's actually a choosing not to retake it for that time. I think that would be helpful as a kind of general practice that comes to mind.
That's great, yeah. Hello, Scott. Hello, Lydia. Hello, Mary. And we have a question from Joram. Not sure if or a statement. I'm not sure. I can't follow it. I'm not sure what the language is. It's not English, so.
It's in Spanish.
It's not okay. So, fortunately, Joram, we can't quite understand this question. We don't recognize the language, so.
It is Spanish, but it looks like it's not really comprehensible anyway. So.
Okay. Yeah, so hello, Manal, and welcome. And okay, then we have a question. It looks like from Victoria. A two-part, written into 2 frames here. Good evening, Venerables. How did you choose the monastery that you wanted to train at when you began your monastic journey? Did you travel to lots of places, or were you inspired by a particular teacher beforehand? Thank you, and much metta. Okay. Would you like to start, Aya?
Okay, sure. Well, let's see. I chose to train at Empty Cloud, so that's why I'm here. Only not too long ago, very recently. Let's see. So how did I decide, and did I travel, or inspired by a particular teacher? So I did do a little bit of traveling, but not so much. So at the time I was living in Argentina, and there weren't other monasteries like Buddhist monasteries that I could ordain at, that I was interested in ordaining at. So within Argentina, I actually didn't travel to Buddhist monasteries. There was a Zen monastery in the province I was living in, like kind of in the mountains. I didn't have a car or anything, but on the monastery property, they also had a bar with beer made in-house on tap. So it wasn't really kind of a sanctuary of renunciation. And I'm sure they do lots of other good practices, not to criticize too much, but I wasn't interested in ordaining there. And the Zen tradition is different, obviously. So that was one consideration for me, was I actually didn't really want to return to the U.S. But I did because for monasteries, I returned to become a monk. So I did actually travel to the United States again, returned to the United States to become a monk. And I traveled to Forest Dhamma So that's a monastery in Virginia. I was there. I talked to the abbot there, and I talked about ordination there. Um, and I had a really nice experience. I also talked on the phone a little bit when I was in Argentina. I called Wat Metta, and I also talked to a Bayagiri monastery, some monks at Bayagiri monastery, or a monk there. So I did make some contact via phone to ask a few questions, but I didn't make it in person. And then I traveled to Empty Cloud. And the reason that I chose, I think in brief, the main reason was I was interested in somewhere that was focused on early Buddhism, but within a Vinaya lineage and within a practice lineage. So, place where, for example, the monks don't use money, place where the monks follow some of the kind of the major Vinaya rules, and I mean, in the Vinaya in general. But that was one of my considerations, and also focused on kind of an interest, you could say, an inclination in the suttas, an inclination in the teachings of early Buddhism, and using those as a framework for practice. And so that was really what drew me to Empty Cloud. And that was kind of my main consideration here. And then there were many other factors, but I think part of it too is understanding, like, not every, if I go to a monastery, it's not that I'm signing a contract to live there for life as if I was a Catholic monk, but rather just to receive training. And so that was also consideration.
I actually did end up staying in a number of monasteries before deciding where to ordain, and I think that was beneficial to me, to have exposure to different environments, different monastic environments, different communities, different teachers, and in trying to find the right fit. And I actually another reason that was good was that I found a monastery that I thought was a good fit for me. But no place is perfect, and really, if you ever want to really be happy in the monastic life, you have to do the internal work. So, so sometimes, actually quite often, I think monastics after some time in the monastery where they are ordained, they start thinking, maybe I should have ordained at that other monastery over there. I've heard really great things about, or this other monastery over in this other place. But if you've already traveled to several monasteries and seen what they're really like for yourself, then you when you settle on a place, well, I've actually been to several monasteries, and this was I thought this was a good one where I ordained, and you can be quite confident that there aren't like lots of other great monasteries elsewhere, and you ordained in the wrong place or something like this, and so that's actually can be quite good, helping you be firm in your determination to continue the training where you are. And one aspect of that also is that no place is perfect, but also the training can be quite difficult, and actually, if the training is good, your teacher may try to make things difficult for you, and so if you really have looked around and have a good sense that you really are in a good place, have some other communities for comparison, then you have faith in the community you're in and the teacher and so on like this, and be able to stick it out and do that kind of internal work I mentioned before. I think. I really feel like it's best to ordain in a monastery where the code of conduct is adhered to, the Vinaya. I think it's better for the practice, and it's better for community harmony and these kinds of things. Personally, it's my personal opinion. And so it's good to know something about the code of conduct. There are textbooks about the code of conduct for people who are interested in studying it, lay people and monastics, of course, alike. To have a sense of what does it really mean to be a monastic. Is while there are traditions and customs within the monkhood, the only things the Buddha said that the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis have to do is actually follow the code of conduct. So he encouraged them to learn the teachings, and he encouraged them, according to the suttas and the code of conduct, he encouraged them to learn the teachings, he encouraged them to meditate, this kind of thing. But the only things he said that they had to do were to follow the code of conduct, and so this is what really distinguishes a monastic from a layperson. That is the code of conduct and their precepts, and so it's very good to know a good deal about that before someone commits to the monastic life, and to know that the code of conduct is being followed and taught in the monastery. And the teacher-student relationship, I think, is very important. You probably guessed that from what I was saying just now. According to the Code of Conduct for monks, the Buddha initially stipulated that a newly ordained bhikkhu should stay with his, and actually I don't know the rule for bhikkhunis, I wonder if Ayawada knows, but for a bhikkhu anyway, to give an example, so a male monk has to stay with his teacher for the first 10 years, that was initially the rule, of his monkhood in order to learn from the teacher. And but later he relaxed it to 5 years on request from the monks. And I think this is a very good practice to keep, to stay with the same teacher for 5 years so that the teacher really has an opportunity to kind of mold you and change you and this kind of thing. And you also have a good chance to really learn their teachings and to put them into practice over time and experience the benefits of them. Because spiritual work does take time. Yeah, so there are many teachings about finding a teacher, and I've talked about some things here, and teachings about a place to practice and to train. These are some ideas, and if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to write in on this subject. All right. Hello, Karuna, and hello, Maria, and Joram again, and Tien. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. Sorry, but hello. Tien from Vietnam, and Kumu, hello. And Joseph. Hello, Joseph. Joseph has a question. My question is, could you... oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just think there might have been some preamble here. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Oh, sorry. Looks like I accidentally skipped ahead. Okay. Perhaps as the
Did you want me to
as the chat box was was loading. Sorry. Okay. So starting again with Joseph. Warmest wishes. I discovered the Jivaka Sutta, which is Majjhima Nikaya 55. It centers around metta and food, and I was curious if you would help clarify some points in the sutta. All right, interesting. Hello, Meredith, and Joseph continues. A householder or their child approaches and invites them for the next day's meal. That's the invites the monks. The mendicant accepts if they want. When the night has passed, they robe up in the morning, take their bowl and robe, and approach that householder's home, where they sit on the seat spread out. That householder or their child serves them with delicious alms food. Okay, and okay, it looks like we've got a long quote. Looks like Joseph. It looks like we've got a long quote from you from the sutta. It's spanning several boxes here in the chat window, and perhaps what we should do is suggest that perhaps you submit this as a suggestion for a sutta study. In that way, for example, if Bhante Sudaso or one of us does a sutta study, we'll have a chance to bone up on the sutta a bit, read it, and be able to formulate an answer and respond to the question you have. So let me suggest that to you, Joseph. All right. Okay, scrolling ahead, then we've got Kumu. Here we go. Venerables, what is the best way to practice the precept of not eating after noon in the home environment? For example, what type of nourishment is allowed after noon? Okay, yes. So, well, for monks, the Buddha allowed the five tonics, as they're called, often translated into English. The five tonics is a term is used for it. Also, perhaps translated as medicines, but it's intended to give us more energy without really constituting actual food, as considered kind of by the world as food. And let's see if I remember all five of them accurately. We've got And so by extension, these are typically considered allowable for lay people who are following the 8 precepts as well. And so that's why I think of this list of 5. And it's sugar, honey, ghee, oil, and there's another one that's called, what is it, like fresh butter. Did I get that list right? Okay. So is molasses a separate one, or does that count under sugar?
Yeah, syrup or sugar.
Then it's sugar. Sure. And okay. And there's another one called fresh butter, and is the 5th one. So sugar, honey, ghee, oil, and fresh butter. And fresh butter is thought by some to constitute cheese, but there are various attitudes about this. It's a dairy product. I think it can still be found in India, if I understand correctly, but isn't widely found outside of India. And so things like this, sugar and honey, ghee and oil. So maybe a cup of tea, for example, with some honey in it is a relatively common kind of tonic to take past midday by monastics, and someone following the 8 precepts could do that as well. All right. I wonder if let's see, other ideas about best ways to practice the precept of not eating afternoon in the home environment. And I think maybe one danger of trying to practice 8 precepts in the home environment is that homes often have, or typically have refrigerators with food in them and pantries with food in them, and having food easily accessible when you're trying to not eat past midday can be problematic, right? And so, if you can at least keep them out of sight. So if you can keep food out of sight, this actually can make quite a difference. Seeing food. Coming in contact with food, seeing food, can make you hungry, or it can elicit temptation. And so if you can keep all the food behind cabinet doors, for example, this kind of thing, so at least you don't make eye contact with them, then that can make a difference. Maybe if you have any other ideas, Ayawata.
Maybe. Well, one thing that comes to mind to me with this is there's a quote from the suttas. And it's, what is the one thing? What is the one? And the answer is, sabbe satta ahara titiga. All beings survive based off nutriment, based off food. That's the one thing. And it says, if you understand this one thing, you can be free of all suffering. So, yeah, I think maybe it helps. Like the best way to practice it, I think, would be really working with the desire so that you can uproot that and understand that relationship to the best of your ability. So you could reflect, for example, like when the desire for food comes up or when you're eating, making sure you're eating with the monastic contemplation. We do it usually every day in the monastery, sometimes even twice a day if we chant the chant separately and also before eating. And we do this chant, which is the Buddha instructed that this is how one should properly eat. They should reflect properly, making use of the requisite of food with an attitude of the food not being for fun or for pleasure or to indulge in it or to beautify the body or to adorn ourselves, but only to nourish our body and to sustain our spiritual practice, to remove the pains of hunger, but without adding on kind of the discomfort from eating too much and indigestion and things like that. And so that we can maintain a pure, blameless mind in regards to food. And then you can also add on to this like the practice of sense restraint, which is even more advanced if you want to really layer it up, is that when you're eating, making sure that you're not going into liking and disliking in little subtle things. So I think like reflecting on these different Dhamma pieces, like the reflections on food and how the reflection on being's relationship to nutriment and the dependent relationship there and sense restraint, I think those should help. Because then it can be like a meditation. Sometimes I like to think of the mealtime as eating meditation time. Like it's not time to eat, it's actually time to do another period of meditation. And it can be the most difficult meditation, especially if you're following the 8 precepts. at home, like Ajahn was saying, the temptation. So yeah, I think turning it into a kind of Dhamma activity, and that way it's also fun. Because then when you're feeling hunger, it's like, oh wow, this is so fun. I get to investigate all these different Dhamma qualities and meditate and watch the feelings and observe my mind and investigate this relationship. So you get all this fun Dhamma out of it instead of it being a kind of grueling, tempting, painful practice that you do.
Right. Yeah, it's keeping the precepts just out of sheer endurance, or will, is good. It's useful, but it can be quite a difficult way to practice as well. And so, having these kind of mental trainings is very beneficial. And you reference the all being subsists dependent on nutriment, and there are 4 nutriments. Physical food is one of them, right? And the other 3 are cognizing or consciousness, contact, sense contact, and decision, chaitana. Is that right? And so yes, these 4. If you can abandon desire for all 4 of these nutriments, then you can be free. It's one of the ways that Buddha talked about it. And if you want to eat like a monastic, and maybe this could help also with, Ayawada was talking about the meal contemplation, which is fantastic advice, and how to consider what you use food for and so on like this, and investigating the desire. You also some tricks monastic use to reduce desire for food is, for example, they might eat all the food in one container, one bowl, for example, and you might even mix it all up together. So, the spaghetti sauce and the ice cream and everything all together, and it's all completely mixed. Or some monastics will, when they have the food, they'll pour some water into it, and make it kind of sloppy that way. Just some plain water, and make it sloppy. So this way to kind of reduce the flavorful aspect of it, so that then craving doesn't get started as easily. And then as we go against craving in this way, and go against our liking in this way, then the liking goes down. And whereas if we indulge our liking, our craving, then the craving will grow. And so that can be helpful too. All right. All right. We have a question from Brooke. So, sad news. I'm sorry, Brooke. My grandfather of 98 years old died. He was in my life for 38 years. I've lost my meditation practice and my Dhamma study as well over the last week. I'm surprised by the power of love to throw me off the path. Okay. Well, yes, so looks like that's where it stops. So, well, condolences, Brooke. Very sorry to hear of your loss. Sounds very painful. And the power of love to throw you off the path, and yeah. So this can happen, of course, and you're not alone. This is quite a normal thing to happen, in the sense that is natural, I should say. That someone who's experiencing an intense loss like you are, it can really throw you off course in so many ways in life. And again, condolences. Our hearts go out to you. Yeah, so I hope you have some people around you, or you seek out some people who can be supportive. I think I have some thoughts on this about. I'm not sure how much I should say, but about the power of love to throw us off the path. And so. I think perhaps one thing you can consider is the practice of loving kindness as a way to come back onto the path, if you like. If you'd like to try to get back into a meditation practice as a support going through this difficult time, perhaps consider practicing loving kindness meditation for your grandfather, and for yourself, and for if there are other family members also who are grieving, for them as well. And and perhaps sharing merit also. You can share the merit, the goodness of all the good things you've ever done with your grandfather and again any other grieving people who are grieving and perhaps hopefully this will help you to overcome some feelings of sadness to some degree. Um, this is one of the promises of loving kindness meditation. As I was saying earlier in the evening, it may take some faith in the beginning as you start cultivating it. But generally, practitioners find that if they persist a little bit, and if they're patient, if they have some faith, that if they have their mindfulness to stay with the loving kindness, that it will build over time and it will displace feelings such as grief, and lift the heart up in a way that's still very positive. And so I can offer that. I wonder if you'd like to offer any words, Aya.
Oh, well, yes.
Like.
I mean, I would definitely add that I hope sending my condolences, and I hope that you're not discouraged by falling off your meditation and your study. I'm sure that you're doing lots of Dhamma study in this grieving process, learning about like you mentioned, this love, and learning about death, and this is the real stuff. So you're really doing a lot of. You have a big opportunity for Dhamma study and meditation. I think I would just encourage you not to have too many high expectations of yourself. Meditation isn't just sitting with your eyes closed and kind of blissing out, but like Ajahn was mentioning, you can practice loving kindness and maybe you'll be crying. It might look like that for this time, and that can be very transformative. I believe, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ajahn, that Ajahn Chah said, unless you've cried, a good few times in your practice, you haven't really started practicing well.
That's right, yeah.
And so I think, it's really okay to fall off and not beat yourself up, but just kind of remember that actually this is great. This is going to be maybe one of the most profound experiences for your practice that you've ever had. Because I also later on, when you reflect on death, you'll really know at least one aspect of how it feels. So when you contemplate death, it'll be so much more surreal and more profound for you. So I'm sure that this process, I hope, like Ajahn said, that you feel supported, and that's also that as Dhamma practitioners, we support you, and we also don't shame you for any kind of pain or emotions that you go through, but actually really encourage you that this is something really normal, as Ajahn was saying, something very natural, and something that can be very, very good, very helpful, despite the pain.
Good luck, Brooke. All right. And Richard sends in his thanks, and hello, Gita, and all right. Now I have a question from from Brittany. She says, hello, thank you for your time, Venerables. What one may call ego has been diminished in me, but along with it also confidence. All right. Now I get shy and nervous. Are there any techniques to alleviate this? Oh, very interesting. Yeah, okay. So, well, yes, I think what I would recommend is let's see. First, determining some moral guidelines for yourself. This may sound surprising in relation to this topic, but the Buddha says in the scriptures that if you keep the 5 precepts, then you'll be confident in the midst of any assembly. And I think that partially this may be because of the inner strength it gives you to keep precepts, to have moral principles that you live by. And also to keep those, requires some strength, and it develops strength over time. And also it will help you to feel confident that because you haven't done anything wrong, and so you can't be blamed. And this also can make you feel good. I think also perhaps the inspiring themes I was talking about before, specifically recollection of your generosity. I didn't mention that one, I think, earlier. Perhaps I did, but maybe not. Recollecting your generosity, recollecting the sila that you keep. That's the morality that I was just referring to, in a conscious way. Thinking about it, these are actually formal meditation techniques. So think through these things and this will make you feel good about yourself, help you to feel confident. Um, yeah, there's some ideas. I wonder if you have any additional ideas.
Let's see. Well, maybe yeah. Kind of dovetailing off of what Ajahn was saying with upping your confidence. When you mentioned your ego being diminished, um, sometimes it can be hard to know because the word ego has a kind of broad sense of meaning in pop culture and pop psychology and so on. And but I think it's worth mentioning that in Buddhism, ego is not just the feeling of pride, but actually feeling, for example, inferior or kind of low self-esteem, low confidence. That would actually be what we would call an increase in ego, an increase in asmimana or mana, the sense of conceit, not in the sense of arrogance in the traditional way that we think about that, like hubris, but actually it's a feeling of still comparing oneself to others. And if it's going to the inferior scale, it's just the other extreme of the same type of thing from a Buddhist perspective. So someone who's very arrogant in our culture, and I think many cultures, we tend to think arrogant people are really bad. And people who are very ashamed of themselves and kind of too, maybe not so confident, that's actually much better. Better to be that way than arrogant. But I think both can be debilitating. And from a Buddhist perspective, they're really the same thing. And so, as Ajahn was mentioning, ways of kind of raising your confidence, these are actually ways of kind of raising your ego in a way. Not in a healthy way, but a feeling like, oh, I'm a good person. It's okay to be myself. It's okay. I don't need to be afraid. And I think that shame, it's often maybe a sense of fear, like afraid of how people might perceive you, or crossing social boundaries. And I think that's why the sila is so nice, because we feel, oh, I don't need to be afraid. And one thing that's good to recollect is that arahants, people who have no sense of conceit or self, they're said to be fearless. So any kind of, I guess, shame or kind of low confidence if it's related to fear, we can recollect that, oh, people who have no sense of ego, they're actually completely fearless. But maybe one aspect of this is you feel less social, and maybe that kind of manifests as a feeling of shyness. And I think that's also normal as we practice, that we become a little bit less social. Hopefully not in an unhealthy way, but maybe not kind of, drinking and yelling and shouting with your friends. And that might be a normal sense of a more shy character that develops in the path. Those are a few thoughts.
Okay. Thanks for the question, Brittany. Good luck. Okay. Well, thank you, Mark, for writing in. We have a question from Mark. I have terminal cancer, and this is speaking of. It looks like speaking on behalf of somebody else, on behalf of Joram. Paraphrasing the question. I have terminal cancer, and I am struggling with optimism, and don't want to give up. But I don't want to give up. Any suggestions? Struggling with terminal cancer. Excuse me. I have terminal cancer and I'm struggling with optimism, but don't want to give up. Any suggestion? Okay. That's an interesting question. So the cancer. So it sounds as though the cancer, from the way it's written, the cancer is terminal. And I'm not sure that this is a very easily answered question. It can be answered really in brief, I think, speaking of a topic like this. But I suppose the optimism is about being optimistic with regard to recovering. Someone with terminal cancer who wants to try to remain optimistic about recovering. And I think what we, I think what we can do is maybe actually, I would recommend is perhaps some letting go, recognizing that life is very uncertain, and trying, to let go of what's going on, to which means recognizing that, as I said, life is very uncertain, and we don't really know how things are going to turn out, and that we might suffer internally over it. But this won't actually change what's going to happen. And so if we can reflect on this a bit, and reflect that actually being at peace inside is really the most important thing. That's where really the end of suffering is, and the reduction of suffering is. And not to be so caught up in external things and in such as how this is going to go, then maybe that can help you let go, so you're more peaceful inside and more accepting of however things turn out. And perhaps in that way also you'll see that maybe you will recover, but also you won't be, if you're able to let go to the degree you're able to let go, then you won't be so disappointed if you don't. And so maybe I can offer that as a middle way between these things. I wonder if you'd like to add anything, Aya.
I think that's...
Okay. We have an Anumotanas from Michigan. Oh, I've lost track here, sorry. And, all right. All right, there's quite a few comments here. All right, I like this comment from Space Cat Mowgli. All right, great name too. I always love a meditating person in the background, and it always motivates me to start a session. Great, yes. Seeing someone else meditating can be very inspiring, right? Okay. Then another question from Victoria. I think Victoria's one who asked earlier about how we decided which monastery to ordain in and train in. What was your immediate family's reaction to you wanting to ordain? And did their view change over time? Were there any major life responsibilities you needed to wrap up before you could leave lay life? These are two questions. Let's see. What was your immediate family's reaction to your wanting to ordain? Did their view change over time? That's the first one. So, yes, the views did change over time. In my case, my ordination history is kind of a long, complicated story. So maybe I'll give you the brief version. That initially there were a range of reactions. Speaking of the immediate family, different members of the family. But there was one extreme that one family member was quite upset about it, and actually felt that I was kind of rejecting the family by going away and into living in a monastery. Other members were more accepting, but also some degrees of disappointment, so on like this. Fortunately, I was able to get both of my parents' permission to ordain. And then over time, there was more acceptance. Especially as they realized that actually this really seemed to be the path for me, and so so I can offer that. And so this seems to be quite common in my experience from monastics, that as family members see that it seems to work for the monastic, that it's a good path for them, then they become more accepting of it, and satisfied at least that the monastic has found happiness that's satisfying to them. So. I wonder if that's your experience, Aya, if you're willing or interested to share.
Oh, yes. Well, okay. So my family's reaction was very similar, I think, to Ajahn's. I mean, not exactly. I didn't have... I guess when you say immediate family, I don't know if you mean, like, for example, my parents and siblings, or extending beyond that. But my family's reaction was a little bit, I think, what? You want to do what? At first. And over time it became, I think they understood though. They understood that I was not to expect too much of me, I think, because I think it was clear to them that this was kind of foreseeable. in terms of just, they knew me, obviously. They raised me, and so they understood that this type of thing was pretty much in character. But it was surprising at the time. And I did, let's see, it did change over time. So both of my parents were very supportive overall, like extremely supportive, and I'm extremely fortunate. I have amazing parents. And yeah, they were both at my ordination ceremony, and even though there was some resistance initially, and both of them came around to it at different times and in different ways, but eventually they did both come around to it, and they both gave me their permission. And one of them, I think to a certain degree, they gave me their permission kind of like, well, you will do what you want to do anyway, so we might as well kind of allow it. I think that was part of their attitude, was sort of like, well, this is really it's very clear that this is what you want to do. And so there's no point in trying to stop you. I think there was kind of that sort of defeatist maybe attitude to a certain degree, which it worked out. It was easier that way. So I'm grateful for that. But over time, there was also that feeling of actually this is understandable, and actually this is they are not just like, oh well, we wish it was otherwise, but I think there was a sense of concern. And so yeah, not to get too boring with the details of it, my story is really just the same as most monks. But yeah, there was a kind of they came around, and now they're very supportive. And some other family members were more resistant, but that's okay. And overall, my family doesn't make it an obstacle for our relationship.
Then Victoria also asked the question, were there any major life responsibilities you needed to wrap up before you could leave lay life? I wonder if I could answer just in brief,
Please.
perhaps on behalf of both of us. And typically for any monastic, anyone who's interested in ordaining and taking that path, there are going to be major life responsibilities they have to take care of. Usually there will be. If you have an interest in how to wrap up any major life responsibilities, if you like to submit, you can. If you mention any specific kinds of responsibilities and how to deal with them, perhaps we can speak to that to some degree. Okay. Oh, and comment from Priyank, who is sending in her greetings with gratitude. Very nice to hear from you, Priyank. And all right. Then question. Let's see. I think we've answered already one question from Brooke, and we're getting relatively low on time. So maybe Brooke, I think we already answered one question from you, for which you've sent in a thank you. Maybe what we'll do is we'll circle back to this additional question after we've answered some of the others' questions. See if we can at least answer one question from everybody. All right. From Amy, I think we haven't answered a question from Amy yet tonight. So I have been practicing more consistently, and lately I've observed the mind's increased desire to bring an end to suffering. I also observe the frustration and anger towards obstacles that interfere. Right. Okay, and the second half is, so I also observe the frustration and anger towards obstacles that interfere with or prevent me from practicing, such as family who don't support me, work and daily responsibilities to take care of others. And this desire to bring an end to suffering feels like tanha. Okay. The anger, this continues on, the anger that results towards people and duties that get in the way keep arising. This is the opposite of what I'm trying to cultivate. Please offer any advice on how to redirect my practice. Okay, sure. Okay, yes. So, well, I think what I would recommend is we have to do the work internally, recognize that anger coming up and the different emotions coming up about all this, the the desire to end suffering and the anger coming up, these are all arising from within us. These emotions are initiated by our own hearts. Okay. And this is a fundamentally important perspective from Buddhism. The second noble truth. You mentioned tanha, right? And in not just tanha, but in general, that when we're experiencing emotional suffering, it's because our own hearts have initiated the suffering. The suffering is caused within. And if we can remember this perspective, and if we notice what's actually going on in the mind, so if you're noticing anger and say, well, what's a good way of dealing with anger? Is bringing the focus in and how to work with that problem instead of getting caught up in thinking about all those things that seem to be stopping us from practicing. And so for anger, the practice of loving kindness is a very good antidote to anger. And I was giving some basic instructions of practicing loving kindness earlier in the love streams. You may have heard of those. May have heard those instructions. And so I can recommend that. With regard to the desire to bring an end to suffering, saying that it feels like tanha, this is, I think it's good to have a desire to end suffering, and there's the concept of world weariness, in Buddhism, wanting to be recognizing the limitations of the world and the suffering inherent in samsara and so on like this, and the desire to be free of suffering naturally arises from this. But if it's causing us agitation and so on, then we want to practice being more peaceful, and so make an effort to be more calm, so that the mind is clear, and so that you can mindfully and skillfully take the steps you need to take in order to reduce your suffering. If the mind is agitated, then it biases your perception, it messes up your perception, and then things like anger can arise, etc. So if you can make some time, take some time to meditate on a theme of meditation that helps you to be calm, such as perhaps something like loving kindness meditation, as I mentioned, or breath meditation. You also might look at what is good in your life, what you have to be grateful for, and think about this kind of systematically. What is it that you have to be grateful for? And also think about, how, in fact, you do have opportunities for Dhamma practice. And even if you don't have as many as you like. If you're keeping your precepts, for example, it's already a major step on the path. And so you can be happy about that as well, and you can celebrate that. You can also think about all of these things that appear to be obstacles in a positive light. How is it that these things that appear to be obstacles actually can, in some ways, be helping you on your Dhamma path? And are there ways in which you can turn them to your advantage on your Dhamma path? So thinking about, well, if instead of seeing them as obstacles, can I see them as opportunities for developing Dhamma qualities within myself? And since you talk about several different kinds of quote-unquote obstacles, I won't talk about that in detail, but you can look into it, and maybe over time you can send in more questions if you like about individual ones, if you like some tips about how to look at these things in a more positive light. I wonder if you have anything to add. It's a good question.
Yeah, I guess that's a wonderful advice. I wouldn't want to complicate it further to add more. I think that was a lot to work with. But the one thing I would add, maybe another perspective to complement it, is that it is actually one of the major considerations when someone wants to become a monk in the suttas, and something that's sometimes chanted when you do the ceremony, is they reflect life in the house, so household life is cramped and dusty. And so actually I think part of it is recognizing, like, this is why people become monks. So it's normal, and it's just like part of it, I think, as a householder, which I am almost certain that you are, assuming, but I'm not 100% sure, is that part of it, I think, is accepting, like, in the West, we don't necessarily have it in the back of our mind. Maybe in a Buddhist culture it's more prevalent. But I think many people in a Buddhist culture or in a society where monasticism, like renunciation, is very normal, these types of things, it would be very normal to think, maybe I want to become a monk. Because if these are really obstacles, if you really do want to end suffering, and you really do think that the conditions aren't maybe supportive enough for it to be possible, then you shouldn't necessarily kind of suck it up. Maybe actually you should become a monk. So I just add that perspective that yes, I wouldn't contradict anything Ajahn said, that you definitely should work with the defilements in relation to it. But one other alternative to consider is maybe you want to become a monk.
Yeah, that's really true. Yes, yes, yes. That's a great point. For some reason, I was thinking that maybe that wasn't possible. You have all these responsibilities and so on like that. But yes, if you can, and you may want to lay the path, see what kind of a path can you lay down, so that you can at some point, sooner or later, renounce. Noticing that it is easier to practice and make faster progress on the path towards the end of suffering if you can renounce worldly concerns and so on. Sadhu, okay. Okay. Look like some comments between the viewers, and all right, scrolling through, looking for another question. Okay. So I'm not sure if, let's see if this leads to a question. Okay, good. We have a question from a Facebook user. Hello, I recently found out about Empty Cloud and like to participate. I am a Catholic by birth, but I found peace in Buddhist teachings. I am practicing meditation by myself, learning from books and YouTube, but not very successful. Very hard to stay focused on breath, anapanasati. What is your advice to have more mindfulness, to be more mindful? Okay. Well, great question. Fantastic question. I think I'd like to congratulate you on finding the Buddha's teachings, and I'm happy to hear that they resonate with you, and that you're putting some effort into putting them into practice. And I'd like to say that your experience is quite normal. If we stop all of our activities and sit down and try to be mindful, one of the first things we notice is that the mind is not used to being mindful. And it can be very restless and shoot off in all kinds of directions. And this right here, actually, if we look at it in a positive light, is actually some learning already. And we start growing in wisdom, noticing this. The first noble truth of Buddhism is that there's suffering, the noble truth of suffering. And you could say that this is a form of suffering. The mind isn't under our control, and we might want it to be peaceful. We might want to be mindful, but it does its own thing. And this also represents what you might call the not-self nature of the mind, a mental activity. It's not under our control. And this is a form of suffering. All this mental activity and so on, and the fact that we can't control our mind. And so we have an opportunity here, witnessing this when we start meditating, to see these teachings firsthand and grow in wisdom about them. And I think one thing is to have faith that as you keep practicing, as long as you keep trying, and keep practicing on a regular basis, despite the initial difficulties you have, that slowly over time it will get easier. And you'll learn more, and the mind will settle down more easily, and so on like this. You'll also, over time, encounter more teachings that are helpful. And if you start to feel frustrated, you want to let that go also. Let go of the frustration. You may have heard me speaking earlier about the recollection of peace. You can simply, as you start meditating, perhaps each meditation session, you can just think to yourself, may I be calm? And I talked about this earlier, so I won't go through it again. You can find it earlier in this live stream. You also can ask specific questions about someone who has experience in meditation. You can ask specific questions about what it is that the mind is doing specifically that makes it hard for you to be mindful. So, for example, do you usually feel annoyance and anger, for example? Or is it thoughts of the future and the past? Or do you find that desire to be active comes up, restlessness and so on like this? Because there are different antidotes for different hindrances, as they're called in meditation, these kinds of mental things that come up and get in the way of our mindfulness. Of course, you want to try to establish your sila, so the precepts. Putting those in place is very conducive to helping the mind settle down. And having a full spiritual practice with many different aspects can be very helpful. So also practicing, for example, some generosity and doing some service work, perhaps doing some worship, If you have a Buddha image, if you're inspired by the Buddha, have a Buddha image and spend some time with it every day and think of the inspiring qualities of the Buddha and think of the inspiring qualities of the teachings and also that of any Dhamma practitioners or Dhamma friends that you have. This fills out kind of a spiritual practice. So you have multiple facets to it. These are all supportive of mindfulness practice. I wonder if you'd like to add anything. Is anything kind of missing?
Well, I have a story.
Okay.
Not very entertaining, but earlier tonight, before we joined Monk Chat, we did a service of chanting and meditation and making offerings. And Ajahn Wade was the one lighting the incense. So he kind of very respectfully went over to light the incense, and he picked up the stick and put it in the candle. And then the candle the fire on the incense has to go out so that it can burn, right? If anyone's ever lit an incense, they've seen this. And so he kind of shook the incense, and the flame kind of stayed, and he kind of shook the incense, and the flame kind of stayed, and then eventually it went out. And I found that so fascinating, because it's just how it is with our mind, right? Because so much, it's kind of like we try to get the mind to go quiet, and we try to move it around, but actually, if you've ever lit an incense, sometimes it doesn't always work. Depends on the fire. You have to kind of examine it and kind of watch a little bit, just very still. But if you just watch, sometimes the fire will just go out. But if you wave it around, or for example, if you ever started a campfire, actually if you blow on it, that's how you get it started. So sometimes when we add air to fire, it actually goes up. And sometimes when we add air, it goes down. And I think that's how it is when we try to focus on the breath. Actually, sometimes what we don't realize, and this is another thing that Ajahn Wade once said, which I think is really wise and very good to recollect. One time he said here in person, he said that it's good to remember, paraphrasing, that when we're meditating, what we're really trying to do is relax. We're not trying to focus on our breath. Focusing on your breath, it really has nothing to do with meditation. We're trying to relax. And so we use the breath to relax. Like our mind wants to move, so we use the breath as a way to calm down the mind so that it becomes still. But the breath itself doesn't really matter. So sometimes we try to relax and we kind of relax, focus. And that's like kind of waving the candle around too much or blowing on a campfire, and then the mind just gets more agitated. So I think that's one thing to remember is that we're not trying to focus, we're just trying to relax. And so the breath is just a way to relax. And we don't necessarily need to kind of push the mind onto it, but just kind of let it sort of just calm down. And sometimes that's a good approach. But sometimes we need to be more proactive, so it's kind of a matter of investigating. But that came to mind from tonight's puja.
Okay, interesting story, yeah. So, yes, practicing with the breath, it's yes, it can be tricky to find the right level of effort. It's important to use the breath as a point of focus for the mind, because it's a calming meditation object. It can be calming to the body and to the mind both. And in order for it to work, you do have to stay with it. You have to be mindful of the breath. But if you try too hard, this can stir up some restlessness sometimes. If your focus is too lax, if you're not trying hard enough to stay with the breath, then the mind might wander too much. You can start daydreaming or something like this, and you really get lost. So finding that kind of that sweet spot of effort can be difficult. Um, and yeah, but and so we have to also give it time and be patient. And if you observe how you feel after you meditate, I think the meditators usually find that even if the meditation is difficult, even if they only notice a few breaths, you know, noticing a few breaths can make a difference, and you feel better after you're done meditating than when you started. And so taking some time to notice how you feel can make a difference and make you feel better about the meditation, and help you to feel optimistic about continuing to meditate as well. Okay. Rick sends in a question. Venerables, can you talk about how to be at peace with those who control and harm others? Okay. How to be at peace with them. Pardon me, Rick. The way I interpret this question is to be at peace with the fact that there are people who control and harm others. Perhaps also if you're in their presence, if you see it happening. Sometimes we come across this in life, people trying to control and harm others. And how do we be at peace with the fact that they're doing this? I think, so there are multiple ideas coming to mind. One thing we can think of is equanimity. You know, if we can't, for example, do something to change the situation ourselves, you know, then we might cultivate equanimity. We have this in the suttas and in the Buddhist tradition as one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, or divine abidings. I know you're familiar with these, Rick. This is the 4th one, equanimity, reflecting that all beings are the owners of their actions, that is, their kamma or karma, and inherit their actions' results. And so by Buddhist standards, it may be that someone is being controlled or harmed by others because it's a result of their kamma. And it's not to think that, you know, they deserve to be treated this way, or something like that. It's not to blame them, but instead to recognize that by Buddhist standards, a natural process of cause and effect is taking place, and in order to help the heart to let go. It's not to have ill will towards those people who are being harmed or controlled, you know, as I mentioned, for example, judging them or blaming them or something like this, but rather to help the heart to let go, and to be at peace with the situation. And being at peace, having the heart be clear, then we can make skillful decisions about what is really good for us to do, perhaps in relation to this in particular, or not at all in relation to this, but in relation to something else. And we might also cultivate compassion for someone who is harming and controlling others, assuming controlling in a negative way, in a way that isn't good for the person who's being controlled. Recognizing that all beings are seeking pleasure and trying to avoid pain, including those who are harming others and trying to control others in negative ways. They just don't understand what really is the right path to happiness. Think that they'll find happiness in this way. But instead, if they're committing bad karma, they're going to reap harm from this themselves. And reflecting on this, that ignorance is at the root, and the result that they're going to get from this is suffering, we can actually feel compassionate towards them, those people who are harming or controlling others. And this can help you let go also and feel more at peace with it. And both the practice of compassion and the practice of equanimity are good karma that will bring merit for you. And they're both parami, that is spiritual virtues, that you'll develop through these practices, that will strengthen you on your spiritual path as well. And yes, I hope this is helpful, Rick. Looks like we're coming up to, it's already about 10 minutes before the conclusion of the show, of the live stream. So perhaps what we should do is move on and ask if you could, ask you to answer the next question. Um, then Jerome says, thank you for broadening his horizon with the answer that we gave.
Oh.
And so I'm glad that was helpful, Jerome. And then a Vipassana meditator writes in, thank you for the wisdom and guidance. And Jerome would like more advice. If you have any more specific questions, don't hesitate to write in. And the Vipassana meditator asks, looks like this is going to be a question here. I have been meditating for 25 years. I used to meditate 2 hours a day. A few years ago, I increased it to 4 hours a day. Sadhu. Increasing to 4 hours improved my mind much faster. Sadhu. There is an issue that I face now. If I get sick, or if I take a flight, or something like that, my life force drops and can take 3 to 4 months to recover fully. Okay. Could you advise on how to stop the life force from dropping? Okay. So the question, so you started out talking about your meditation practice and how it improved your mind. And now you segued into a question about keeping your life force from dropping when getting sick or facing other challenges. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on this, Aya.
Well, what comes to mind immediately is that I'm not really. It seems like something that maybe is more medical than it is medical in a kind of physical sense, you know. So I don't know if I'm really qualified to answer. And what I would maybe advise is that if you have a doctor or if you don't have health insurance, that if you have a friend who is a doctor or who knows doctors, maybe you could get in touch. You know, sometimes if you don't have health insurance, sometimes you can have a friend who actually is a doctor, and they have lots of friends who ask some questions. So I think this is something that really is probably, at least in my opinion, it's probably best kind of worth talking to a medical professional about, because it could be, you know, it could be dangerous or it could be nothing, and it's good to get someone's opinion because it might be something more bodily. Yeah, in that way. That's at least my opinion on it. I don't know, Ajahn, if you have other advice.
It's good advice, yeah. Probably talking to a healthcare professional. Okay. Okay. Do either of you know anyone who broke someone's heart due to renunciation? That is a romantic partner. And how did they handle the breakup situation? Okay. And any related suttas would also be wonderful. Thank you, Venerables. Do you know someone? I'm contemplating whether or not to tell the story. So, do you have an inclination to answer? Maybe just one of us answer in the interest of time.
I do know someone. I don't know if I want. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you want to. I know the person is actually me, so I don't know if I really want to talk about it. But I could if you wanted me to.
It's up to you. It's actually this. Yeah. So, the person I'm thinking of is also me, and so I'm wondering if I'm not sure if we'll talk about this either. So, okay. So, how did they handle the breakup situation? So, being straightforward and honest about it as early as possible, and talking it over, and sorry. Okay. So, okay. So, Strange. All right, we're back with you. Sorry for the interruption. So talking about dealing with breaking up in a romantic situation for someone who's renouncing the world and going into the monastery. Excuse me. Um, Well, thank you very much, everyone, for typing in your questions. We're going to draw this evening's monk chat to a close. If we haven't answered your question, we apologize. There'll be another monk chat next Friday night, and so please feel free to join again for that and send in your questions. We also have the live teachings coming up on Saturday evening here at the monastery and Sunday afternoon, and we welcome you all to those as well. And so we'd like to anumotana your practice, as rejoice in the goodness of your practice, and wish that you continue to prosper in the Dhamma. Until next time, have a good night.